It's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Welcome to Eat, Pray, Run, where slow food in the apocalypse doesn't mean you're ending up on the menu. I hope you brought your appetites. I'm Dr. Erica O'Neill, researcher in the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics at Arizona State University. And today we're talking brains, which I'm very excited about. We're investigating the nutritional motivation underlying zombie cravings for brains with Greg Popovich and what you need to eat to outrun the hordes with Corrie Whisner. But first, I want to introduce the host of Eat, Pray, Run, Dr. Rob Dunn. Dr. Rob Dunn is a Reynolds Professor in the Department of Applied Ecology at North Carolina State University and a Professor of Human Biodiversity in the Center for Evolutionary Hologenomics at the University of Copenhagen. Rob, can you tell us a bit about the juicy topics we're going to sink our teeth into today?
Oh, I'm super excited about today. We've been talking a lot about zombies and food, but we haven't talked about zombies and brains as food. So we're going to talk about the taste of a brain, what a brain gives you when you eat a brain, and how the nutrition of a brain plays out in the daily life of zombies. So it should be a great show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear. I'm going to start taking some notes during the broadcast here. And on that note, let's bring our first guest on. It's Dr. Greg Popovich. Greg is an associate professor in the School of Exercise Science and Athletic Training at West Virginia Wesleyan College. Greg, how are you flexing your gray matter in the apocalypse? I see you're surrounded by quite a few zombies right now.
I sure am. I've been working on my zombie ventriloquism. Right. Making the most of the apocalypse.
Well, Greg, let's get serious for a second here. I really want to know about zombies and brains and what zombies get from brains and why they eat brains. And last year, you published a really important paper about zombie brain eating. Can you tell us a little bit about what the zombies get out of eating brains, why they do it, and how it plays into their sort of natural history?
Sure. When in urban culture, this was explained in a documentary about Return of the Living Dead. So in 1985 was a very influential movie. And that was the first movie in which this fellow here, the Tar Man, cried out for brains. That was novel. Prior to that, in all the other movies and inceptions of zombies, it was about eating flesh in general, but these zombies crave brains. And in the movie, they actually captured half of a cadaver and they strapped it down and they interrogated it or interviewed it if you prefer. And they said, why is it that you eat people? And the zombie retorted, not people, brains. And the zombie asserted that she could feel herself rot. So if we buy into the idea that zombies would be sentient creatures and be aware of their own decomposition, I think that's very intriguing. And there are two hypotheses that have emerged. The one hypothesis as to why zombies eat brains was actually put forth by the movie crew themselves, by the writers. And they suggested, not in the movie, but in the documentary, that zombies ate human brains for the endorphins so that they could obtain pain relief. Intriguing, but I don't find it entirely plausible. Now, it's a cool idea, right? Because if you're being attacked by a zombie, you're flailing, you're running. Those are the activities that actually do pump out more pro-opiomelanocortin and create more endorphin as a result. So you'd have more analgesics floating around in your central nervous system. The issue is those are polypeptides, right? I'm a nutrition professor, and what we know about polypeptides is they don't survive digestion. They would very rapidly, and if the digestive tract of the zombie were functioning somewhat, it would also catalyze those down into individual amino acids, rendering it ineffective. My alternative hypothesis is I think the zombies are after essential fatty acids, particularly omega-3 fatty acids, which constitute nearly 60% of the dry weight of a human brain. So there's a lot of omega-3s in the human brain. What we know about omega-3s is they are involved in achieving a balance of inflammation, and whereas other essential fatty acids such as omega-6s encourage inflammation and stimulate nociceptors or pain receptors, omega-3s tend to have a calming effect. So we know omega-3s are rapidly absorbed from the gut, readily obtained in the diet if we're eating the right things. So to me, that's the more plausible of the two hypotheses. They're after those omega-3s.
But so if the zombie is eating a brain, what's the immediate pleasure that it gets from the brain? Is it just the mouth feel? Is there a taste of brain? I mean, we know there's not a fat taste receptor in humans. Is there one in zombies?
That is right. I don't think that zombies would have developed one. We would think that they're slightly less evolved creatures. But perhaps, I'm going to go with, if they're operating at ambient temperature, maybe they're enjoying the warmth of it.
Oh,
Maybe
interesting.
It is the mouthfeel.
So it's like avocado and a little bit. I mean, I don't know what's the right comparison. Is there anything else like brains?
I would say tofu, but that's probably debatable. Although I got to tell you, avocado is kind of like a green brain, is it not? I think probably texturally, that makes some sense. Those two things are not that different. I don't know. Maybe good old Jell-O. Uncooked brain's pretty gelatinous.
So it has this smooth feel. And so, how much brain does a zombie need to eat to get it go about its daily life? I mean, does it also need to eat the body? Is the brain enough to satisfy other nutritional requirements?
Well, I definitely think, one of my other areas of expertise is actually in protein, and, eating a human is probably the most efficient way if you want to assimilate those proteins into your own, right? So I think, there would be advantages to eating flesh in general, but I can't imagine another scenario that would necessarily provide the same degree of analgesia if that's what's driving them to eat the brain. So they might eat other body parts for other purposes, just for general anabolism and maybe an attempt to try to make repairs in their own bodies. But from an analgesia perspective, I think the brain would still be first and foremost in their thinking.
So tell us more about this analgesic effect. How fast is it when you watch a zombie in a movie? Like, or when you watch one out your window, when is it experiencing that effect? When should we look at them and think, oh, I know what happened there?
I think that the movies portray it as you get more of an immediate gratification. But I think in reality, we all know that would take a while to be digested, right? Fats are pretty slow to digest in the spectrum of macronutrients. And secondly, you're going to have to reach a certain threshold. So to get back to one of your other questions about how much brain is adequate, we know that a 4-ounce serving of calf brain, by comparison, has a week's worth of essential fatty acids for a human. So we could probably extrapolate that, I think, pretty safely and say that about 4 ounces of human brain would probably contain roughly the same amount, depending upon if the person ate a healthy diet, believe it or not. If they ate a lot of fried foods, you'll find more omega-6s. If they ate a healthier diet, you'll find more omega-3s in that brain. But
wait, so which one's better for a zombie? Do you want a healthy person or a Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Well, that's the cruel irony, is sometimes they joke, they say, if you're not good at running, right, then you might be the first to be devoured. But I have to think that if a person is unfit, they actually would be the less desirable brains. I think the zombies really would like the fittest individuals. They're going to have the healthiest amounts of omega-3s concentrated in their brain.
Oh, wow.
But it's going to be a chronic dietary adjustment for the zombies.
But
they need to eat well all the time.
If you're a zombie and you end up up front of a CrossFit, you've sort of hit the mother load. You've got brains with the right kinds of fats. You eat, you go
can just
home.
Run into that gaping garage door and eat all those fit people.
So we have a question from Christopher Patton. Christopher wants to know, is there any evidence that zombies enjoy cerebrospinal fluid as a beverage? Or do any species enjoy spinal fluid? Or is there something in it to enjoy? Is it? I mean, I guess you could slake your thirst.
Well, its greatest, obviously, since it's a biological liquid, its greatest nutrient would be water. So perhaps if you're dehydrated, that might be a little something special, like the tahini sauce on the Mediterranean brain or something of that nature. I'm not sure what else you would find nutritionally in cerebrospinal fluid.
Oh, another question we had is, do zombies actually drink or do they just eat? So do they have to get their liquid through eating? I've never seen a zombie drink, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Have you ever drunk? No. No, I've never seen one imbibe either. So we're assuming then that they're meeting most of their fluid needs through consumption of human tissue, right? Muscle, though, is about 72% water. If you ever take a person's hydration state at the time that you choose to eat them. If they've been running from the zombie for a while, they're going to be a little dehydrated, not as juicy, right? But yeah, eating muscle would be a good way to replenish water, I would think. Cerebrospinal fluid, again, that's an attractive idea, although we don't have a whole lot of it.
Thank you so much for that insight, Dr. Greg. You're doing a lot of hands-on research with zombies there. And on that note, let's bring on our second guest. Our second guest today is Dr. Corrie Whisner. Corrie is an associate professor of nutrition in the College of Health Solutions at Arizona State University. Corrie, what are you eating to outrun the zombie horde?
Oh, I'm definitely carb loading, not imbibing in the brains.
Excellent. So, Corey, you've acquired some fame for your depiction of there really being two kinds of zombies. You sort of divided the zombies in two. Can you tell us about your thinking about the different trophic forms of zombies and how we should think about them? Oh no, they got her.
Oh, I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah. So can you talk about the two kinds of zombies and what they eat and what that means about how they live?
Yeah. So, if you've seen the movies, you know that sort of this original zombie from Night of the Living Dead was sort of slow moving, kind of seemed to have a dull gaze and bumbling along. You didn't have to walk fast to get away. And then we've seen shows like 28 Days Later and World War Z, where they're much more aggressive and they move really, really fast. And I think that has something to do with what they're eating. So those slow Night of the Living Dead zombies are probably on a keto diet because they crave brains, and that's almost all fat. And so here you have the nutrition facts label for a single human brain. And so, on average, we need about 2,000 calories a day. So you'd be actually hitting that target roughly from eating.
Oh man, but that means like one brain is almost enough calories. And so like even if you've eaten one person, you might not be over your threshold. That's really disappointing.
Yeah, so you got to make sure you can outrun those suckers. But there's a lot of other nutrients in brain too. It's pretty complete in terms of vitamins and minerals, which you need to unlock the potential of enzymes that carry out biochemical reactions for us every day. So I can see the appeal, although there's an opportunity cost in trying to crack open a skull and get that brain out, especially when you're competing with the rest of the horde. So these more modern zombies, I think, are craving carbs. And so it's not unlikely to see a zombie gnawing on an arm or leg. The liver is also a pretty good source of carbs. So you can see how many grams of carb you'd get from eating a leg, about 400 grams, which is 1,600 calories, and then 100 grams for 400 calories from a liver. And so muscle meat doesn't have quite as robust of a combination of vitamins and minerals, but the liver's a pretty good source. You'd still be missing some B vitamins, which are helpful for utilizing fuel so that you can run. But overall, they're going to be moving a lot faster with carbs because we digest and utilize those much easier than fat.
So the carb loading for zombies are really, they're to be afraid of. And do they need more calories total per day? So more individual kills, or how does that work out?
Oh, it's a good question. So if they are moving faster and running down humans to eat, they probably would need more calories, just like us. The more active we are, the greater our caloric need every day. So could be more dangerous.
So if you find yourself with a slow zombie that's just eating your cousin and you don't like your cousin so much anyway, the odds that it's going to eat again that day are really low. And so you could sort of sit down side by side and sort of get to know each other. But if you've got a fast zombie, you should probably get out of the way. Is that right?
I think so. It's good advice.
And so, can we outrun these two different kinds of zombies? What are the odds? How fast do we have to be? How do we think about that?
Well, as Dr. Greg said, that there's some differences in what you might crave in terms of brains, but how fast you have to move to outrun these guys really depends on what you're eating. So if we take an average untrained adult and in America who's maybe a little bit overweight and have a zombie that's attracted to eating brains, you can see how fast a female and a male zombie would be moving. So for a female zombie on brains, 1.4 miles per hour, and then a male zombie on brains, 2 miles per hour. If we compare that to zombies who are optimizing their nutrition to eat mostly carbs, then for females and males, it's 3.1 and 4.3 miles per hour that you'd need to be running to outmove them. Now, if you were to take an elite athlete and maybe just somehow a zombie got lucky and got a hold of them, then you're talking about 7 to 8 miles per hour that you'd have to run. So you really don't want an elite athlete to become a zombie, because we're all in trouble then.
So if you see Usain Bolt zombied, Bolt, but probably you're just out of luck.
Yeah. Then I think your best bet is a sniper rifle.
But to me, it seems like the zombies aren't really. I mean, most zombies are not that fast, and so it's surprising they don't use tools more often. That they don't use other ways of finding and getting humans. Is it because they're just not able to sort of innovate new cultural techniques? I mean, a crow could do it. Why not the zombies?
Oh, that's true. I mean, they are decomposing on a regular basis, so I would assume that any nutriture that they're getting is basically going to just constant repair of tissue and maintaining blood supply, since they always seem to be oozing and leaking blood and other bodily fluids. So probably not so much left over for maintaining optimal brain performance. And so it wouldn't surprise me that they aren't really able to use tools and do other things.
So how does this comparison of the two diet types in zombies relate to our understanding of those same kinds of diets in humans? Do we see the same effects in our own lives if we eat like a keto zombie versus a carb loading zombie?
Yeah, definitely. So we're not that different from zombies. If you've ever read about the keto diet, in the literature, they often call the symptoms that go along with following a keto diet over the first month or so the keto flu. So you feel kind of run down, lethargic, sometimes can have hot flashes. And that's really because your body has to work so hard to break down carbs into fuel versus carbs. Our cells really prefer carbohydrate. And I think for zombies, they're kind of experiencing the same thing. That's why we see them move really slowly, and we would be also moving very slowly if we only ate fat.
Wait, but so does that mean that we might see a zombie having like a keto hot flash? Like, oh my God, I've just eaten too much brains. I feel terrible. This makes me so warm, but it's just what we do. Why couldn't we be a different kind of zombie? I mean, it feels like there's a great opportunity here for really zombies reflecting on their poor choices and thinking about other lifestyles. Is this?
Yeah, well, I mean, thinking about humans, we all tend to keep doing the same things over and over again, and it's really hard to stick to a healthy diet. Most people always revert back to kind of their old ways, so that probably doesn't change once we're undead.
So the inability of zombies to deal with their situation is what makes them most like us.
Yep.
Let's bring Greg back on. He's one of our zombie experts here in the field. First, I want to address a couple comments from the audience. People seem to be getting a little concerned over my condition. I feel fine. We were just having Gwyneth yesterday. She gave me plenty of advice. If things do go wrong, I've got alternatives. So I don't need to just start cracking brains. You did say that they are not best in order to keep myself in tip-top condition. So thank you very much, everyone, for your concern.
That was in and of itself concerning. I mean, it just felt like you really needed to explain your condition in a way that made it seem like it was probably worse than we think.
I feel great today. Tomorrow, who knows what tomorrow brings, but for right now, I've got tofu, I've got avocado, and I've been chatting with Gwyneth, who is a vegan brains connoisseur. So we're going to be all right.
Excellent. So is there anything in nature that we think is sort of like a zombie with regard to brain eating for both of you? I mean, the only example I can think of is bears. So we know that some bears will high-grade salmon when they eat them and just eat the brain first. Are there other examples like this? In some ways, I'm convinced that brain eating has a lot of advantages, this analgesic effect. Why don't we see more of it? What makes the zombies sort of special in that regard? Any thoughts?
Well, I may go first. I might offer something. I think a lot of animals might lack the appropriate dentition to crack through a cranium. So that's always that's actually some research we would like to do in the future, is to take human dentition and put it in a force transducer and a material testing machine and find out, can you actually penetrate, a porcine skull, which is a good model for human skulls. I think any kind of animal that consumes carrion in general, maybe they eventually find their way into eating some liquefied brain or something as it seeps out of the nasal passages. That would be my instinct, is that maybe it's a second thought, like as it becomes more readily available, you don't have to work so hard for it.
Oh, that's interesting. So that means, really, if you don't use tools, if you're not using stick tools like a chimpanzee or something, actually getting the brain out is really a trick. And if you can't fly like a crow and drop it from a great height and like you would a nut, that it really is this hard to get in, nut, so to speak. I hadn't thought about that at all. And I guess big enough carnivores just break into it with their jaws.
Mm-hmm.
But the zombies don't have that advantage. Very interesting.
What if you had those intelligent zombies that now have, because of this show, they're watching. And now they've thought, if I just push somebody off of a building, it'll be much easier for me to get into that cranial vault.
We have a question from Neil Smith about long distance running. So Corrie, you were talking about short distance running, I think. If as humans, we're good long distance runners, could we just run and run and run and eventually escape? Or can the zombies do the same? How does that play out?
Yeah, no, I think we could, especially if they are eating brains. They are going to maybe be able to sprint quickly for a short period of time, but as zombies eat more carbs, we also need to be doing that, and then using up all of our glycogen and our muscles and livers to keep us sustained for long distance. And as mentioned, humans do have a history of hunting in packs and being able to outrun gazelles and other things that they can then basically take down because they run it to exhaustion. And the more we all stick together in a group, the better we can also outsmart the zombies as well.
I almost feel like the risk from zombies has been overstated. That sure, they get some of us when we're not paying attention, but if we can outrun them and they're having hot flashes all the time, it seems like we're probably in pretty good shape. And they can't make tools. They struggle to get in at the brain. They're really at a disadvantage.
They are, but I think we're easily distracted by things going on around us. And, pray that the internet does go out in the true apocalypse, because as long as we have access, we're in big trouble.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. There was like a fly on my head or something.
Oh.
Gwyneth says they might want to go after osteoporotic older individuals. Their cranial vaults are much thinner. Oh, that's sobering.
That's a good point.
That multiple myeloma victims, aka pepper pot syndrome, for appearance of holes in skulls would be particularly attractive. And maybe also some of these periods in history at which people had poor nutrition and so had more bone problems. Early agriculture, Mesopotamia, would have been a bad zombie time. We don't think about that. Aren't as many movies made from then. Greg, do you have other thoughts? What would you do if they showed up today? I guess you have a problem right now in your lawn, it looks like.
Well, we're sorely outnumbered, about 30-1 here in my front yard, believe it or not. But I feel a little better though after our discussion, because now I feel like I can probably outrun these individuals. And I think my girlfriend would say I'm pretty thick-headed, so that might be neuroprotective. I'm feeling good about my chances. Excellent.
And so do you feel like, but does either of you feel as though brains were something that you would like to eat in the future? Or does it, is this I'm intrigued by the analgesic effect. It's potentially a real thing, right? And so is this a pleasure we're missing out on because we're not eating brains so often?
I'd be happy to do a little research and check back in with y'all in a bit.
I think the big concern being prions, right? Jakob-Creutzfeldt disease and whatnot. And so I think that's why we've seen so many brains disappear from supermarkets, not human brains, of course, but is that concern over prions. So I'm not so sure that I would eat brain as a delicacy. Certain brains seem to be safe, pork brains or whatnot, but in terms of eating a human brain, I would think twice about that.
So that one of our questions from the audience is bringing up something I'm a little curious in, and that's if you think there's any good market available for cranial vault openers, and kind of what tools you think might be helpful in that regard.
Looks like Dr. Greg got a good tool.
Where did that
Powered
shovel
bone
come
saw.
from?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good one. But going back to this, I'm stuck on the analgesic effect, because people do eat brains at different points in history. Do we really think, Greg? Do you think this is a real thing, that effect is something people might experience and that might influence sort of culinary cultures, and or is this too small a thing to be part of how we think about different diets?
Right. Well, part of my training is I'm also a physical therapist, and so I've worked with chronic pain populations. And it's hard to divorce diet, I think, from contributing to chronic pain conditions, which oftentimes you look at either chronic inflammatory conditions, or at least something where someone is overly sensitized and they're always communicating pain right internally. It does give me reason to pause and contemplate, is that person getting enough omega-3s in their diet? And if they had more, could you shift things perhaps in the favor towards feeling less symptoms?
So maybe a take home there is if you're suffering from pain and lacking omega-3s, that a tip toward omega-3s could change your well-being in some way?
I would hypothesize that. I think we're still in need of research to offer confirmation that that's the case, but I think there's a good justification for the research.
Excellent. We'll tune back next year for that. Corrie, any closing thoughts about how you feel about moving forward with zombies in our world?
Keep eating the carbs and probably mix in some fruits and vegetables along with maybe some nice salads if you can. Garden it all in the apocalypse, because you can't subsist only on animal-based products alone. It'd be tough.
We never see that scene in the movie where a bunch of zombies are gathered around eating a Caesar salad and talking about their day. I think it would add, right? It would give us we talked about empathy yesterday on the show, and I think if the zombies ate Caesar salads, that it would sort of change my feelings about them.
So we've got a comment that came in from our own Dr. Zed, who was looking a little worse for the wear yesterday, and he wants to let us all know, be it a PSA or not, that you'd have to eat the brains raw in order to take advantage of that endo-opiate protein. So Neil Smith was asking whether garlic butter and lots of salt would do the trick. And Dr. Joe is saying maybe not, but you could also indulge in some delicious salivary glands too. Because salivary glands produce similar analgesic compounds.
I like that two of our viewers both at the same time knew about the value of the salivary gland.
And they're both looking like they might be on Team Z here. So, we're trying to share information among each other to keep all the rest of you safe.
To our listeners, do we know if eating for the salivary glands, can they be cooked, or they also have to be raw?
I'll let you know if they respond.
All right.
We might have gotten a hold of some of them. Take a minute or so.
Let's wait. Oh, it's the zombies. It's the trouble with listeners. You can't see what's happening. Well, on that note, I'm tempted to go home and read up a little bit more about raw tongue and brain eating, and what we do and don't know about it, and whether it could change my life. And I like Neil's idea to add in a little bit of garlic and salt. I think it has possibilities. Certainly,
Awesome.
stranger things have been eaten.
Looks delicious there, Dr. Greg. Thank you all for joining us today. It was wonderful to speak with all of you and to sample your brains, your fresh brains that you have brought. They were so tempting. I just want to let everybody know that they should tune into Undead Live next. We have a special edition. And until next time, eat well, everyone, and stay alive.
It's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.